All right, so we're going to get started. We just were dealing with some technical issues on our side here. Okay, so welcome to our second session of Getting into the Weeds, Find Profit in Your Farm Business. And I'm happy to say that today FCC sponsored this session for us. And joining us is Ronda Bellefontaine. And I'm just going to slide here. Tell everyone a little bit about Perennial. So some of our services, which you're familiar with, we deal in agriculture, which most of us, that's how, or for most of you, that's how you would have dealt with us already, as well as our quality and food safety team. We have a product development team, lab services, and new to us relatively in the last few years as fisheries. Just a little plug for the first annual Nova Scotia Department of Agriculture Ministers Conference. That's happening on March 3rd and 4th in Halifax, and please register if you haven't already. The agenda is now released and lots of exciting speakers to check out. So for Rhonda, Rhonda is with Like Nobody's Business, a company that she runs out of PEI. Rhonda grew up on a farm in Middle Musquodoboit, Nova Scotia, and she studied at the Nova Scotia Agricultural College, now DAL AC, and has a Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Economics. Her career has been in agriculture and mainly in farm records and financial analysis, with a more recent move to working with many non-farming types of business. She believes in professional development, and not only for herself, but for all business owners, managers, and employees. She has a certificate in small business management and is a certified trainer and ag expert analyst and field manager pro, which is why she is joining us today. And so I'm going to pass this over to Rhonda here in a second. And just a quick note, she will be asking for questions, which I can either type into the computer, or if you want to reserve your questions for one of the breaks in her presentation, then we can open the mic up at that time. Great, I'm going to pass it over to you, Rhonda.
Thank you, Jen. Jen, I just have one question before we get started. Am I able to use my Zoom tools for pointing?
Yes, you are.
Okay, we'll see how it goes. Maybe I won't need to point. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you to Jen for contacting me regarding doing this presentation today. As Jen said, my name is Ronda Bellefontaine. I'm a professional agrologist. I have been working since 1985 with farm families in this area of business management and analysis. And I have seen a lot of records, and I have seen the absence of a lot of records during that time. So today we're going to talk about farm records and where you can find money in those records. Now, I'm just going to I'm just having a technical difficulty here myself. I want to share my screen. Okay, I think that's where I can do this. Okay. Are you able to see my screen and the presentation? Give me 1 second here. I think we're good to go now. So you can see my screen. So my business is called Like Nobody's Business, and it's primarily a training business that usually participates in or undertakes with farmers one large project a year. Bookkeeping services and consulting services kind of evolved in the business since the early days. And just to give you some background, most of the training I deliver is one-to-one, setting up computer accounting on farms. And mostly I use FCC software, the Ag Expert Analyst for accounting, and the Field Manager Pro for the field and crop records. It's easy to understand, it's user-friendly, and to me, the learning when I'm working with farms on implementing this software is not in how to get the entries in the computer using the software. It's all the learning that takes place around financial management, financial records, financial reports, accounting, understanding requirements from CRA, learning how to read your income tax return and financial statements. It's about what your records tell you and how they can guide you in decisions. Now, it's interesting to me that most of the training requests I get from a farm is not because the farmer is wanting to improve his or her information systems. It's usually because someone outside the business, an accountant, a lender, or a buyer, is asking for computerized records or records that will improve and make their jobs more efficient to do. So normally my requests for training are spurred by outside requests. It's also interesting to me that over time I've seen farm owners and managers buy an expensive piece of field gear that could cost tens or hundreds of $1,000s, plus the time to learn it, without really quantifying the return on that investment. But when it comes to record keeping software, which is going to cost you somewhere in the vicinity of $400 to $1,000, there's not usually a way to quantify the return on that type of investment. There's no research that I could find that was related to the value of your records in your business. Anything that I did find was from the time when computers were first invented and when computers actually started being used in business to improve or to make easier the keeping of records in business. So it's been an ongoing challenge. I know that farmers don't get into business because they're good record keepers. So there is a handout that was passed out. Was that handout passed out? Yes, I can see people using it. So, thank you. So the handout, I'll be referring to this throughout the presentation, and I just ask you to have a look at it now. The handout first just tells you about a little bit about what I do. It talks about records being the foundation of your decision-making process. And there are different sections that we're going to work through as we get later into the presentation. We will have a break at approximately 1:40 and again at 2:20. That'll be plus or minus a few minutes. And if you have questions at any time, if you could give them to your facilitator, and he or she will type it in, and I will answer those questions for you before we go to break. So the business, to me, when I look at a business, whether it's a farm business or any other kind of business, there are these parts that we all have to take care of. There's, if you have employees, human resources, your operations, which is a big part of business, the sales and marketing that go along with what you're producing on your farms, the financial, and I've added this one in recent times is IT, your information technology. I think this is becoming a piece onto itself in farm businesses that we need to either be able to manage ourselves or to find resources that can help manage that on our farms. As a manager, best practices is to develop a record-keeping system in all of these areas. So IT actually includes the tools and processes for capturing and maintaining and processing records. So as I said, to me, it's a category of its own in the business. And if I can even speak to that, last night, I was trying to get Microsoft Office on my Surface Pro, which I'm projecting from now, so that it would be able to project that. And that was almost a half-day job for me yesterday, between the internet connection and just being able to log in on my computer and get that thing working. So that IT work is a part of the business that is starting to take more time. So you'll be using the handout to check things off if you are capturing different types of records, or using a process that's described in that middle column. And I would also encourage you to make notes on this handout in each of the areas which we'll talk about. And I think this document can become the source of your standard operating procedures for records management in your business. So I have a quote here from Albert Einstein, and it's called "Information is not knowledge." And I think this is really true. And I think in today's age, we have so much access to information, but the real challenge is to take that information and turn it into knowledge. And knowledge in your business comes from the information that is in the form of your records. So best management practice for you as a farm owner manager comes from understanding this and knowing or learning how to transfer all the information that you have in and outside your business into knowledge. So how are records useful in this regard? So in this picture, I think it's a really nice summary of what records are for. Records form reports. Reports are used in analysis, and the results of your analysis are used to make decisions. And your decisions are what creates profit or loss. So really, records are the foundation for your decision-making in your business, and it's your decisions that will create profit or not create profit. GIGO, and it's not GI Joe, but GIGO. And what GIGO stands for is garbage in, garbage out. It's a concept that's applied to the use of computer programs and other processes. If we put garbage in our bodies, garbage will come out in the form of ill health. If we put a lot of negative books and materials, television into our brains, it's going to make us less productive or not as productive, or maybe more in a negative headspace. So garbage in, garbage out, GIGO applies to different things, but I'm talking about it in terms of your computer records. And I want to play you a small video clip about this concept. And the clip is about 2.5 minutes long. And I think it's kind of interesting, and I think you'll enjoy it. So just give me a second to get to that video. You'll have to bear with me. I am still learning this program. I'm trying to find my Zoom. There we go. Share, it's at the bottom. Okay.
Oh, send somebody a dud invoice, did you?
It wasn't me. It was the bloody computer.
Now, hang on. Those things are expensive. Is it yours?
Yes, and it was.
It's very nice. They don't make mistakes, you know.
Don't they?
Oh, no. If something wrong comes out, it's because somebody put something wrong in. Don't you know much about them?
No, I rely on the technical chaps.
Tell me, why did you buy it?
Well, we're a big organization, and from looking around at what other people like us were doing, well, I thought we needed one.
To do the bills and things?
Yes. And it has had a spectacular effect on all the accounting and on the stock keeping.
Spectacular?
Well, apart from the boobs. But my God, the reorganization it took in those departments. It was absolute chaos during the changeover.
Which you could have avoided if you'd been properly prepared.
I suppose so, yes.
Isn't that all you wanted it for? High-powered counting and instant memory?
Well, the computer is the tool of modern management.
Oh? How do you mean, management? What sort of things?
Look here, I do know what management is about. And basically, it's three things. To make the business profitable and efficient, to look after the workers, and to make sure the shareholders get a proper return.
And the customer?
Oh, yes, satisfy the customer, of course.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty comprehensive. That must include every man and process in the whole organization.
Oh, it does. To be a manager means to be responsible for everything.
And exactly how are these management problems going to be put to the computer in order to get the useful answers out of it?
Well, I'll tell the computer boys what I want to know.
And they know as much about your whole business as you do?
Oh, no.
Well, then, where will they get the data to work on?
Oh, God damn it. I'll tell all my people to give them any facts they need.
It took a lot of reorganization, didn't it, to get the computer working properly on your figure stuff, which is fairly simple for the computer.
Yes?
Well, doesn't it seem likely that to get the most out of the computer on these complicated matters, you'll need a rather extensive examination of your whole outfit, its whole way of working?
My God, that'll take a year.
Well, if I were you, I'd send this lot back until you're ready for it. Otherwise, it'll just be garbage in and garbage out.
Using a good desk.
So that was a little clip, and if you noticed in the subtitle on the clip, it was from 1969, which is, as I said, the sort of the period of time when there was a lot of discussion on the power of computers and the power to process information to give us to solve our business problems. So I thought I'd talk about some Geo examples, garbage in, garbage out, and these are actual record keeping examples that I have run into in my day-to-day work. The first one is foliar fertilizer purchases and recording those instead of as a fertilizer expense as a chemical expense. Another example is building repairs. Recording these as machinery repairs or vice versa. The freight expense for shipping your new piece of equipment to you, if it is recorded as freight and trucking, that is an error because it should be included with the cost of your equipment. So then it understates the cost of your equipment and overstates the cost of your freight and trucking expense in the year's business. Another example is loan payments, where the total of the payment is recorded as an expense, when in fact a loan is a blend. If it's a blended loan payment, it includes the principal portion and an interest portion. So these are just a few small examples of where garbage in is going to generate garbage out. And garbage out being the financial reports that you're having a look at the end of the year. Now, there are 3 reasons for error in data entry or in record keeping. The first is lack of knowledge. The second is lack of knowledge. And the third is lack of knowledge. And these errors, the first one is related to the lack, when we're talking about accounting records, it's a lack of knowledge of accounting or accounting principles. The second lack of knowledge is related to the lack of communication between operations and accounting. It seems to be a real challenge if you are the farmer, owner, manager, and you are not doing the books in your business, to communicate to the person who is doing the books in the business about the purchases that you're making and how you would like those recorded. So I even find this, and believe it or not, between spouses as well. And sometimes a spouse is the person who's tasked with keeping your financial or other types of records, but they're doing it based on the knowledge that they have, and they may not be involved in your business except to do the bookkeeping. So if you're not communicating with them, it's very possible that they are making errors in their record keeping. And the third lack of knowledge is related to the lack of paperwork. And I see this a lot. And as a person who keeps financial records for some businesses, when the paperwork isn't there, I can guarantee you it costs you more money because A, I will start spending time looking for it. And B, if I can't find it, then I make the decision, unless I can attempt to get a hold of the owner to find out what it may be. And if I can't get a hold of the owner, then I'm going to make the decision as to how that needs to be entered into the software. And it's my experience that if you are using an accounting firm to do the bookkeeping process in your business, that oftentimes it is clerks who are very good at what they do, but they often don't know your business. So they're putting things in a hole. They're paid to get your books done in a timely manner, quickly. And so they're going to put it somewhere, whether it's in the most appropriate place or not, is up in the air as to what that happens. So let's go back to our examples from the previous slide. And I want to give you an example of how recording something in the wrong place or the maybe not the most appropriate place can result in something that might not be good for decision making. So the first is a real example. When I was doing a project, I was evaluating both the production records and the financial records, and I discovered that all of the foliar fertilizer purchases were being recorded as chemical purchases. And the reason this was happening is because those two purchases happen at the same time of the year. And so the bills that are coming in are usually the chemical bills, your pesticides, insecticides. And so the person who was recording didn't know what a foliar fertilizer was because she doesn't do operations. She's not a crop manager. So she simply recorded those as chemicals because they were on the bills with the other chemicals. So I pointed this out to the farm owners as part of the analysis and work I was doing on the business, and it solved a mystery for them because they could not understand why their chemical bill had been so much higher in that year. And it was just a simple matter of the chemicals were including the foliar fertilizers. So once it was pointed out to them, it solved the mystery. But this goes back to the lack of knowledge of the bookkeeper, which resulted from the lack of communication between the people who are doing the operations and the people who are entering the financial records. So if we look at the last example, the loan payment, and I mentioned this before, a loan payment that is a blended payment, meaning part of it is interest and part of it is principal, the principal portion should be recorded to the loan, so it shows that the loan is decreasing over time, and the interest portion should be recorded to the interest expense, because only the interest is a cost to you. The loan itself is money that flowed into the business at some point, and now is flowing back out in the form of payments. So it's important that your records are set up in a way, and your record keeping system in a way that information is recorded in a proper manner. So in my experience, a lot of bookkeepers do not understand your business in its parts, and some of them don't understand accounting. Bookkeeping and accounting are two different functions. So it's really important for you to know that, so that you don't have an expectation that the person you may be hiring as a bookkeeper may not fully understand the accounting function, and therefore may not be putting data in the right places. So that as a manager and as an owner, that's your responsibility to know those things. Now, one way to correct that particular problem that I was just talking about is what I'm going to call coding. So on the screen, you see two different receipts. One of these is an invoice, the one sort of in the background, and the other one is a gas receipt from a gas station. So if you look at the one on the left, you will see, on the left, you will see that I have written post hole digger, and I have written a number there, 5730-04, which is a category for other equipment. So in your record keeping system, you can categorize your equipment. You can have one account that says machinery parts and repairs, and everything goes into that grouping. You can also set up a system where you have different categories of equipment. Maybe you have tractors, planting equipment, harvesting equipment. I have I have two firms that I work with that every single piece of equipment is an account in their computer accounting system. So they know at all times what that piece of equipment is costing them. So as the owner manager, you can code these invoices before they go to the bookkeeper so that they go into the most appropriate place. The receipt on the right has truck written at the top. That's from our house. And so when I see that written on the top of the gas receipt, I know that fill up went into the farm truck, and it wasn't into a car or into something else that is non-farm related. So because it's a gas receipt, we don't have to put the gas code on there, but the fact that it has truck written at the top, this is part of the communication that takes place between the person who's the operator, owner, manager, and the person who is doing the bookkeeping. And in our farm business, I like to think that I have my husband fairly well trained in A, getting me receipts, and B, marking on them. And if he doesn't see them before I do the bookkeeping, I make sure that most of the time I know what these things are because I'm familiar with farm businesses. But if I'm not sure which piece of equipment, or if it's equipment or building, then I will review that before I enter it into the computer. So coding is simply identifying on an invoice the account that you want to record that expense under. And you can either use account numbers or account names, or just describe what that part or that item is. And a lot of times this is mostly related to machinery and building type invoices. I'm just looking at my notes here. And so the reason that we separate things in with a little bit of attention to detail is so that when we're measuring results, we can really do a proper analysis of the performance of our business. Now with paper records, that analysis is very simple and it requires a lot of computing work to complete that process. Computerized records enable a lot more detail and they certainly enable an opportunity for better analysis. Now, having said that, there is a point where you can have too much detail. So it's a bit of it's a science, but there's also an art to it as well. So now I want to talk about what is a record. And a record is really, it's either an action, a business action, or a business transaction. So the picture on the left is, to me, a picture that illustrates a business action, a farm business action. So this person is planting transplants, or that's what it looks like to me. The picture on the right, if you could just pretend that looked like a parts counter, which is where most of you would be making your purchases, many of your purchases, or a farm supply center. I think it's a makeup counter, but we'll pretend that it's a parts counter. So what type of records would the action on the left generate? So what are the things that this would, this particular action, what are the types of information you might like to capture with that? And to me, these are the different things that I came up with. Who is doing the transplanting? When did that person start and finish? So how much time did they spend at it? What was the area that they covered? What are they transplanting? What is the row spacing? What date did the transplanting take place? What are the soil conditions, the temperature, soil temperature and soil moisture? What are the weather conditions? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it raining? Is it sunny? What is the source of the transplants? So these are all kinds of records around that one action of planting a transplant. Now, if I looked at the picture on the right, which is illustrating just a sample illustration for a business transaction, that would also generate a lot of information or records. So the types of information that it might be generating is what is being purchased, where is it being purchased, what is the name of the supplier, how much is the purchase, what is the total cost, how much tax is in that purchase, what is the purchase being used for, what did you buy, where is it being used, what is the date of the purchase, and there may be some other things. So this is just to illustrate that records or actions or business transactions have a lot of information around them and can be used to analyze your business in a lot of different ways. So now I'm going to talk a bit about documentation. So a record is a business action or transaction, and I described all of the different types of information that can come out of one of those actions or transactions. So then how do we either A, document, or B, where is the documentation around those different types of actions and transactions? So again, on the right, I have pictures of an invoice and a receipt. So business transactions should all come with a piece of paper documentation, whether it's paper that you print or it's a digital record, it doesn't matter. What matters is that there is a document of some kind to back up that transaction. So CRA requires that you have a source document, whether it's paper or digital, for every transaction that you record into your accounting records. And more importantly, I think you should want to have source documentation for all of the different transactions in your business, because these source documents contain all the information that you need, all of the information I just described from the last slide. Now the things, so there are records that are, or there's documentation that's generated outside of your firm. And as I said, most business transactions are generated in that way. And also some of your marketing records. And by that, I mean any sales documents. So for example, here in PEI, a lot of growers are processed potato growers that would ship to Cavendish Farms. And their sales documentation, instead of being generated by the firm, actually comes from the buyer. So in that case, their source documentation is generated outside of the firm. Then the other type of documentation is that which is generated on your firm. So all of your production records, all of your HR, your human resource activity, and some of your marketing records come from within the firm and are generated by you or someone in your operation. So the two pictures on the left, I guess I could be using my pointer here. The first one, the Field Manager Pro, is just a picture symbolizing a computer program, which can also be used as an app on your phone. And you would create a document by recording some information about your field records or your crop records. The bottom illustration, the field log sheet, is an example of a paper record or a way using paper to capture that same information about your field and your crop records. So these programs allow you to record everything about seeding, the inputs, seeds, plants, fertilizer, chemicals, equipment that's used, people that are employed to do some of the work on the farm, and also things like weather, soil conditions, information about your pesticide products, such as their PCP number, their post-harvest PHI or re-entry dates. These are tools that you can use to capture those types of information. So documentation is really important. And so now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to see if there are any questions at this point. So if you have a question, would you direct it to one of your facilitators and they can type it in? Are there any questions, Jan or Rosalie? Okay. Okay, the first question that I have is, when I was talking about coding, how does the cost of goods sold fit into that? And the coding is critical actually to determining your cost of goods. And I'll tell you about an experience that I had probably either 4 or 5 years ago. I worked with a group of potato farmers here in Prince Edward Island. And that group of potato farmers wanted to know what the cost of producing each of their different crops was. So they wanted to know each potato variety, what that was costing. And they wanted to know what each of the rotational crops were costing as well. So we put a project together, and I went to each firm and I went through every single invoice and captured if their if their accounting system didn't have that information, and none of them did, I went through invoices and I actually inputted those into a computer file for each one of them. Everybody had the same list of things we were tracking. So I took all of those invoices and I inputted them, and then I went to their field records, which should have told me how they were using all of the inputs that I was finding in their accounting records. And what we found was that the field records did not even come close to reconciling with the accounting records. So the job of determining your cost of goods sold, not only do you have to know how to code the inputs into the right account, you also have to have really good records on how you're using those inputs, how much you're using on each crop. So in this case, there are two record keeping systems that become really important. And one is the financial records and how you code those, and the other is the field records and how you code those. And I'm going to do a couple of demos at the end of this session, and I'm going to show you both the field record keeping system that I deal with and the accounting system that I deal with, and how you can take the information from your field records and actually allocate those costs by crop. So I'll give you a brief demo at the end for that. The second question is, what is the balance between what you need and what government programs and CRA need when developing your accounts? It's a really good question. And my answer to that would be, you should develop your systems, your accounts based on what your needs are. And I can guarantee you that your needs are higher than CRA's needs. The use of information and analysis will be a lot more detailed and a lot more comprehensive than what CRA needs. CRA needs to know what your sales are and what the cost of your inputs are. Well, there are a few needs. One is filing income tax returns. So even if you have a detailed set of accounts that you're tracking in your business, a lot of those will just be consolidated for filing your income tax return. The second thing that CRA needs is an accounting of your HST that you pay and your HST that you sell. And that is just part of the accounting process. And it's something that gets missed a lot. It's interesting, and I'd love to know how many times I've missed it myself. But in doing these projects with farmers, when I'm going through records, I'll often find HST that was on an invoice that wasn't claimed. So it's kind of important that that is communicated to the bookkeeper. That is critical that they check every entry they make to make sure that any any HST that is claimable is recorded as claimable. The other thing is CRA requires is payroll remittances and T4s and those sorts of things. And accounting packages today, if you set your employees up properly, you shouldn't even have to worry about any of that, because the computer will process those payroll remittances and give them the information you need. But short answer is that developing your accounts for you is more comprehensive. You as a manager is more comprehensive than CRA requirements will be. That's a great question. if there are no other questions, I want you to just take a quick break, say 5 to 10 minutes. If you have to use washroom, get something, grab a drink of something, and we'll start back here in 10 minutes.